evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. Tonight, exclusive details of how the evacuation of the Indian mission staff at the embassy took place, plus what happens now to those stranded. Also, the transition of power in Afghanistan. What happens now on a day in which the Taliban has announced that they have called an amnesty, saying women can be a part of even the government and that their rights are guaranteed but under the terms of Islamic law. And in a press conference which is just about going on now, they have said the Islamic emirate is pledging to all world countries that no threat will be posed to any country from Afghanistan. This at a time when the former first Vice President Amrullah Saleh has said that he is the real president of the country, with President Ashraf Ghani having fled. But no one knows where Saleh is presently. Is this a first step towards the revival of the old Northern Alliance? Next up on the show, a chat with the Olympic bronze medalist PV Sindhu on her plans and how she uses social media. Well, the Indian Air Force was able to evacuate approximately 140 members of the Indian Embassy, their security personnel and stranded journalists from Kabul this morning. There were cheers and claps as the C-17 transport took off from Kabul International Airport. Now, this was a complicated process. NDTV has learned that Taliban soldiers actually escorted the Indian contingent from the embassy to the airport. Now, in a tweet, the Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, has said, the movement of the Indian ambassador and the embassy staff from Kabul to India was a difficult and complicated exercise. I thank all of those whose cooperation and facilitation made it possible. Now, back home in India, there was an overwhelming sense of relief. The jet first landed in Jamnagar, as you can see, Ambassador Rudrendra Tandon thanking the Indian Air Force. But getting out of Kabul was an absolute nightmare. 2 Indian Air Force transports had flown into Kabul on August 15th for the evacuation operation. But the security situation overnight between the 15th and the 16th of August deteriorated sharply. Take a look at this picture. It shows the Indian Embassy in the bottom of the screen and Hamid Karzai International Airport in the top of the screen. That was the distance that Indian Embassy staffers needed to get through to get to the aircraft. Or between the 15th and the 16th, with the law and order situation deteriorating sharply, no evacuations were possible. Now, the Indian Embassy was under observation by the Taliban. The high security green zone had been breached. This is where all of or several embassies actually are placed. So overnight between the 15th and 16th of August, the situation became even worse. Taliban soldiers raided the Shahir visa agency, which processes visas for Afghans looking to travel to India. The first batch of 45 Indian personnel who evacuated on the first Indian Air Force C-17 yesterday on the 16th of August. Remember, they did this in 2 batches. This first batch of 45 was initially stopped by Taliban sentries en route to the airport. Personal belongings of a few of these Indian staff members were taken away by Taliban thugs as they proceeded to the airport. The first C-17 transport, which again departed yesterday, took off under very challenging circumstances given the chaos at Kabul airport. And you can see some of that chaos, people over there lining the runway over there, thousands of people. But the remaining members of the Indian diplomatic and security contingent were unable to evacuate since the route to the airport, which you see over there, was closed yesterday and there were mobs at the airport. These are satellite images. Overnight, there was a conversation between the US Secretary of State and the Indian Foreign Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, who is in the United States presently. That conversation by phone may have helped movement of the remaining Indian personnel to Kabul airport be resumed. That's where they were evacuated today.
An SOS from Indians stranded in Kabul as the Taliban took over Afghanistan. Over 250 Sikhs living in Kabul have taken refuge at a city Gurudwara for the last 4 days and released this video asking for help. After this Twitter appeal by the Punjab Chief Minister, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar responded, saying the government is treating the matter as priority. In this eastern UP village, the parents of a 28-year-old man who worked as a welder at a private company in Kabul, are worried and nervous. The man sent this video from his Kabul apartment 2 days ago, where he is stuck with other Indians who were doing similar jobs.
सभी लोग परेशान हैं, सभी लोग परेशान हैं।
सही है लेकिन परेशानी है, थोड़ा सा कोई निश्चित नहीं तालिबान क्या करेगा।
क्या मांग करते हैं आप सरकार से?
हम सरकार से यही करेंगे मोदी साहब से कि वह मेरे बेटे को जितना जल्दी मंगवाते हैं।
उनसे तो बात रोज होती है, जहाँ कि अभी कुछ टाइम के बाद मालिक जो भाग गया है, फिर उसके बाद कहता है कि देखिए अब पासपोर्ट भी दूसर कोई कंपनी के पास है।
आज अभी हमारे 100-150 लोग अफगानिस्तान में भी फंसे हुए हैं। हमारी सरकार उस प्रयास में लगी है, उनको भी जल्द से जल्द छुड़ाकर हम भारत जाएं।
Those stranded in Afghanistan will hope this is done soonest. With Mohammad Ghazali and Santosh, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
All right, well, joining us now, Shubhajit Roy. He was one of the Indians who was actually evacuated on the aircraft which came in today. He is with the Indian Express associate editor there, also joined by Ahmed Rashid Salim, author and academic scholar of Afghanistan, Islam and Farsi literature. Heather Barr also joins us. She's with Human Rights Watch. Shubhajit, let me come to you first. How difficult was it to get out of Afghanistan?
Well, the situation was challenging to say the least. When you go to a spot to report in a conflict situation, you feel that you will be able to get out as and when you want. But that's not how it played out to be, especially since Sunday and Sunday evening. And Monday morning was really difficult because the airport infrastructure just collapsed. When I reached the airport at around 4:50 a.m., it was packed with people, and there were 6 armored vehicles which had blocked access to the airport. And there were thousands of men, women, children who were just trying to get to the airport. Some of them didn't even have passports or tickets.
I can't actually hear the program. I'm trying to put headphones in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that was a sort of, that gave us a sense that, okay, there is complete chaos and lawlessness at the airport. And the Taliban were firing from their armored vehicle periodically, almost every couple of minutes, 5 minutes. And we had to take cover behind trees or whatever was there, you know.
And this was this morning, was it, or was this yesterday?
That was yesterday,
this
Monday
was yesterday.
morning.
So you
Monday
were trying
morning.
to get on to the commercial
Air
flight
India
out,
flight.
the Air India flight, which was eventually cancelled.
Exactly.
And then when the situation became, very, very dicey, how were you able to sort of link up with the Indian embassy? And could you tell us about that evacuation this morning?
Yeah, so I was in touch with the embassy throughout my stay there, and that was, I think, a sensible thing to do for any Indian who was visiting there. And we barely managed to get out of the airport because there were people with gun-toting Talib fighters who were at the airport asking us to vacate the airport, and waving pistols and firing aerially, and at one point also firing at people. I mean,
and so at that stage you were able to get in. There was a convoy of Indian vehicles that got in, right?
At that point of time, the first convoy was able to get in on Monday night. And that was the 45.
Yeah, no, I'm asking about today. Today, when you were able to get onto the aircraft, right?
Yeah.
How difficult was it to get into the airport?
It was challenging because there was back and forth through the day on Monday for permissions, for approvals to get to the airport. And you see, there are new players in town. There's a new sheriff in town. And you don't know all of them. So the Indian embassy was trying to reach out to whoever possible so that those permissions, approvals could come and the convoy could reach the airport, which took a lot of time. And finally, the embassy was able to secure that approval, and that was pretty late at night. And that's how the entire convoy moved from the embassy to the Hamid Karzai airport.
And we are told that there were Taliban guards as well, Taliban sentries which accompanied you. Is that right?
Yes, there were vehicles who essentially that was the sort of the precondition that there has to be safe passage to the airport from the embassy to the airport, and the Talib fighters in vehicles, two vehicles, they accompanied the convoy, and they cleared out the route for the Indian embassy cars to reach the technical area of the airport, which is controlled by the U.S. military.
Right.
So U.S. troops were controlling access to that area. And that was
Shobhajit, just half a second. I want to go across to Heather Bar. Heather, in just the last little while, there have been these statements made by the Taliban spokespersons where they say that their territory will not be used for violence, number one. Secondly, they've said that they assure or they guarantee the rights of women as per Islamic law, Sharia law. You know, it's fairly unheard of to to see the Taliban make these statements. The question is, can these be believed?
It's a very good question, and I think there's a couple things we have to keep in mind. First of all, the Taliban should expect these claims to be greeted with a lot of skepticism because we all know about how they treated women during their previous time in power. We should all verify those statements and not take them on face value. And one thing the Taliban should do to reassure everyone, including Afghans and the international community, is to permit monitoring. So permit human rights organizations that monitor human rights abuses to function in the country, permit the United Nations to have offices across the country, including at a subnational level, who are able to monitor the situation of women and girls. So that's the first point. And the second point is that even the most sort of moderate statements that they've made still really don't reflect gender equality. And gender equality is their obligation under international human rights law. So, they've made a lot of statements about how they respect all rights under Islam, but they need to understand that those rights include things like the right to wear whatever you want, the right to work in any profession that you want, the right to travel anywhere, and so on. And so I think there's likely still a long way to go from even what their most moderate statements are to what's required by international law.
Yeah. Ahmed Rashid Salim, another statement in this press conference, they've said that they want all media outlets to continue with their activities. Now, this is another surprise, but they have three what they call suggestions. That's an interesting choice of words. No broadcast should contradict Islamic values. They should be impartial, and no one should broadcast anything that goes against our national interests. It is still interesting that they would allow the media. The expectation was that they would shut it down completely.
That's correct. The thing is that the Taliban are on a PR blitz. So they are very savvy when it comes to Twitter. They're very savvy when it comes to social media. They're very savvy when it comes to speaking with the press and others. When they talk about many things continuing and it will be unhampered, we have to keep in mind that the Taliban have a track record. They have a track record not only of how they've treated women, but they have a track record of how they've treated minorities. They have a track record of employing and deploying violence at the highest levels and very widely upon the population. We've already seen certain restrictions being placed, such as the RTA, the national channel, having removed female anchors and being replaced by only male anchors. We know that certain journalists have already been threatened. Others have been killed in various parts of Afghanistan. So it's very important for us to keep in mind that the things that the Taliban are stating currently are intended to appease the anxieties, if I may, of the international community. But it does not do away with the lack of accountability that we're seeing and the senselessness of it all, how a lot of individuals within the international community, primarily the United States, have really washed their hands of accountability and responsibility. And we saw this yesterday with Biden's speech, wherein conversely, he did not take any type of responsibility for the United States' actions and misactions in Afghanistan and squarely placed the blame on the shoulders of the Afghan armed forces, who, I should note, since 2001, over 65,000 Afghan soldiers have died in the fight against Afghanistan. So
Right.
for Biden to say something along the lines that the Afghan people did not want to fight is quite a rich statement.
Yeah. Shubhajit, in just the last couple of hours, Amrullah Saleh, the former first vice president of Afghanistan, has said that he is now the president, Ashraf Ghani having fled. One doesn't know if this is his account, his Twitter account, or it's being ghosted. But there was an indicator that he was in the Panjshir Valley. He was with Amit Shah Massoud's son. There were some visuals of a helicopter, perhaps be taking him over there. Do you see this as the beginning of the revival of the Northern Alliance as a potential military force?
Well, if you see the Taliban's campaign this time, they actually started with the North, exactly to prove a point that they have been able to decimate the Northern Alliance, and started with dominating those parts where they were earlier not as strong as before. So that tells you that has been a very tactical as well as a long-term strategic view from Taliban. Having said that, Amrullah Saleh does enjoy a certain sort of standing in his community, and he's been in the game of this Game of Thrones for long enough. So he knows what he's talking about. He's possibly projecting himself much beyond his capacity right now, because right now Taliban has the edge and has complete dominance, as we see right now in Kabul and across the cities, across provincial capitals. I think we have to watch Hamid Karzai and Abdullah much more closely than Amrullah Saleh.
All right.
And how they come about, what they say and what they do, whether they enter into a power sharing agreement deal with the Taliban or walk out and do a opposition alliance, those characters would be much more, I would watch them much more closely than Amrullah.
Okay. All right. I'm running short on time. I'd like to thank you very much. I just want to go through a couple of these key points mentioned by the Taliban in this press conference. All media outlets to continue their activities, no broadcast against Islamic values. We want to establish a government that includes all sides, no broadcast against national interests. That's interesting. They also say that the spokesperson said that damage to people and families occurred during the war was accidentally, it wasn't intentional, and occurred in an uncontrolled manner. If it happened, he says that they want all media outlets to continue their activities, that they are sorry if there's damage which took place. So a couple of key points which have emerged over there. We'll leave the Afghanistan bit now because we want to move to something completely different. And this was an interview I had with India's bronze medal winning star, PV Sindhu, earlier on in the day. So I began by asking Sindhu how difficult it was for her to get up and get set to fight that bronze medal match. Here's what she said.
Well, was a bit, but I think it was kind of, I had this, thinking in my mind that, I've really worked hard for 5 years, and, I got another opportunity to, to do well and do my best. So, yeah, I just thought that I have to give my best. And even though it was hard, my coach just told me that, there's a lot of difference between bronze medal and the 4th position. So I think that hit me. And and then I was like, no matter what, I just need to give my best and play my game.
Now, you met the Prime Minister. He'd promised to have some ice cream with you, I'm told. How did that go?
I ate butterscotch.
And what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? Is it butterscotch that you shared with the Prime Minister also, perhaps?
Well, I eat different flavors, so
Right.
it's fine. Like, I can eat anything. So it's not like one particular flavor that I eat. No, nothing like that.
All right. Now, what did you discuss with Prime Minister Modi? He's been someone who's inspired you in the past. What was that meeting like?
So, yeah, I mean, when I met him for the first time, like when I presented my racket, which I played at Olympics, so I just wanted to give him. So I gave him and he congratulated me and he, wished me all the very best. And he said, you've done really well for the country and made the country proud. And yeah, when I met him for the next time, obviously he asked me about my parents, and he said, you being a badminton player, I think the genes that you've got, I mean, the height and everything is from your parents. So yeah, he conveyed my regards to my parents, which was really nice. And he said he would meet them next time. So, and he asked me like, how did I feel, and what was the feeling, like the whole Olympics, and everything together. So I just like told him how I felt, and I just told him that the way the government and sir has encouraged us has motivated a lot of people.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you, PV Sindhu, very much for being with us. And as we end this particular bulletin, just to say that our focus is going to remain very closely on Afghanistan and all of the developments. The Prime Minister has said, according to sources, India must not only protect our citizens, we must also provide refuge to those Sikh and Hindu minorities who want to come to India, and we must also provide all possible help to our Afghan brothers and sisters who are looking towards India for assistance. We'll take this short break, come back with more.